Hello there, this is Benny,
And this is Kyle,
and you're listening to The Doctor's Watcher.
the only podcast where I watch Doctor Who and I tell you about it.
Hey Kyle, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you today, Benny?
Well, we were just saying before the recording, it's stupid hot in California right now. We're recording this Labor Day weekend, and it's over 100 degrees for both of us, so
Indeed. If you listeners hear like a sort of a background room tone at some point during this recording, that is probably my laptop fan kicking on.
Oh boy, yeah. But I did want to start today's recording by saying I am genuinely looking forward to this episode. I mean, Kyle, you know I always look forward to recording with you, but for like the contents of this episode as well, this has been such a good, maybe good is the wrong word. This has been such a serial so far. It has I have a hard time kind of explaining what I'm trying to say. When I picture classic Doctor Who, and I haven't seen that much Doctor Who, but in my mind, it's always like this weird, cheesy, low-budget, strange, goofy kind of show. And so far, man, this serial has been like in that sweet spot for me.
Yeah, that is exactly what this serial is delivering.
So I do remember what happened.
Before we get too far in.
Okay.
I did want to mention that we talked a few episodes ago about buying an ad spot on another podcast, and this is actually the first episode that we've recorded since that was read. So our new listeners that we may have picked up from that, I wanted to say hi to again. These are the new listeners who have listened to it and then stuck with it for a few episodes, because this isn't coming out until like September 26th.
Yeah, we already greeted them. We already had said hi to them. How many times? I mean, come on.
Well, I did want to give a special thanks to El Jefe Tacoma and ZK52, I hope I said that correctly, for giving us some 5-star iTunes reviews. So thanks to both of you for those. And yes. I also wanted to thank Chris S. for the nice email that he sent us.
Yeah, I honestly wasn't even sure if I was going to bring it up, because I'm honestly feeling just kind of so overwhelmed by the whole thing. And I guess it says a lot about our podcast that we can get like 2 reviews in an email, and I'm just over there like, blushing and dying. Cause
well, we haven't released any new episodes since since that ad spot was read. So we'll see like if any of our new listeners actually stick with it.
Well, it sounded like we had a couple of folks who started in the beginning, and then we're kind of binging the whole thing, which is, I mean, I don't know if I could stand listening to myself for many hours a day, but yeah. Luckily for them, it's mostly you. I'm just here to say, how much I enjoy the cheesy costumes. That's my job on this podcast.
Well, today's episode is Season 1, Episode 23, The Screaming Jungle.
You just gave it away, Kyle. I was going to say that I remembered the cliff dangler from last time. But that's pretty much it. That's the entirety of the cliff dangler, that Susan is in a jungle and it's screaming.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that was basically the entire cliff dangler. And we actually don't quite start off with exactly that cliff dangler in this episode.
Are you saying that we don't resolve the cliff dangler in the first minute of the next episode?
Oh, it's resolved.
Okay.
But it's actually, we start this episode with Susan in the jungle, and Susan is screaming still, but the jungle itself has stopped. The jungle is silent now. It's just Susan who screams.
The jungle's like, dude, don't make it weird. This is kind of my thing.
Ian and Barbara and Altos and Sabitha all arrive pretty quickly. And, Susan is still screaming when they arrive. And so they try to calm her down. And, also try to figure out, what she's screaming about and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
She is not really able to articulate what she heard, just that it was horrible.
It did sound pretty horrible. You did add a sound clip from it to our previous episode. Can confirm it was horrible.
It was horrible. It's clear here, though, and this is a little bit sad, I thought, but it's clear that Susan expects not to be believed. Because, just in the way she's acting, and she tells Barbara, towards the end of the scene, she says,
I did hear it, And,
nobody had even, explicitly questioned it yet at that point. She's just assuming that they don't believe her, and, I'm sure she's right. Seems like a pretty safe assumption.
At least the doctor's not there, because William Hartnell is on vacation.
That's true.
But, yeah, if he were there, then we can pretty much guarantee that at least he wouldn't believe her.
So they start looking around and investigating the area. They're in, kind of a clearing next to a jungle, or maybe in a jungle, it's not entirely sure. But they discover an archway that leads into some area, but this archway is all clogged up with vines and overgrowth, so they can't really pass through it.
Cool. I'm into it. I'm into the idea of archways that are clogged with vines and overgrowth. It's like peak D&D for me right there.
Yeah, totally. So, speaking of peak D&D, they decide this would be a great point to go ahead and split the party.
That's like that's the go-to.
Early in the episode.
Yep.
So Ian, Altos, and Sabitha decide that they are all going to circle around the walls that this archway is leading into and see if they can find another entrance. And Barbara says that she and Susan will stay behind and look for branches or whatever in case they do end up having to force their way through the archway. Ian tells them not to do anything until he gets back.
Sit there. Do nothing.
After he and Altos and Sabitha all leave on their expedition, Barbara's like, I do wish Ian wouldn't treat us like Dresden, China. Which I thought was kind of a nice lampshade of our bad 60s feminist moment.
Yeah. Yeah, at least they don't just accept it well, I guess that's normal.
Barbara, in talking to Susan, does actually get Susan to tell her about what happened and about the noise that she heard when she arrived.
Mm-hmm.
And Susan says,
well, it was a sound. A noise like tapping and whirring, all mixed up with a sort of screeching.
But she can't remember where she heard it.
I have noticed that of all the crew, Barbara seems to be the one that takes Susan the most seriously, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that too.
It's nice to have at least one character.
Yeah, I do wonder a little bit whether, because it's 60s people writing this, I wonder if that's because Barbara's the woman.
I kind of feel like it's gotta be.
But,
that part of it I don't love, but I am glad to have at least
ignoring
one
that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, just purely on a character level, I am glad for Susan that somebody takes her seriously. So yeah, Susan describes this noise. She says that she's heard it before, but she can't remember where she heard it. Just that she recognizes it as
being something evil.
The sound guy is like, thank you. I did my best.
Barbara starts kind of investigating the area in spite, Ian's instructions to not do anything. And Susan is just kind of lounging on the ground, and then this vine grows over Susan's legs.
Whoa.
and she starts screaming and flailing and freaking out some more.
Is it the classic where like they drape the vine over the actress's legs and then pull it off and then play the film in reverse?
Oh, that probably is how they did it. That hadn't even occurred to me.
I'd be surprised if it wasn't. That's one of my favorite like cheesy low-budget special effects.
Uh-huh. So Barbara rushes over and she pulls it off Susan's legs. It's, very clear that Susan easily could have gotten up herself if the script had said she could get up herself. But, Barbara pulls the vine off her legs and beats it with a rock a few times.
That's right.
But Barbara doesn't believe Susan that it was alive, as Susan puts it, and that it was actively trying to twine around her. Barbara thinks it must have just, fallen out of a tree or something.
Oh, dear. Okay.
So, yeah, I guess having respect for a character who actually takes Susan seriously only goes so far.
There's always that part of me that wants to kind of cut the characters some slack, and it's like, Barbara's from Earth,
Yeah,
she's used to normal Earth things, and part of me does kind of wonder if the characters aren't really used to the concept of being on alien worlds where just about anything can happen.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It seems like there's been a couple times in the past too where Ian and or Barbara will be like, oh, that's impossible. That's like, you don't know that. Like, you really have no frame of reference for what is and isn't possible in the universe.
So Barbara and Susan start clearing away the undergrowth in the archway, and it turns out it's not nearly as dense as they thought it was, and Barbara is pretty easily able to make a clear passage, and she starts heading in.
The GM is like, I just put that there for color. It's just meant to look cool. You can just go right through. You
guys weren't supposed to ignore it. No one actually tried entering the archway.
I didn't think you guys actually listened to my descriptions of things.
Susan starts getting worried and doesn't want Barbara to go too far. But Barbara's like, chill, it's cool. Don't worry. I can still, turn around and see you. It's all good. She gets through, this, little entry passageway or whatever into a little room area, at the back of which she sees
the big grotesque statue.
Those are her words?
Yeah.
I could tell you were doing the voice, but then, when you play the episode, you probably replace that with the voice line. Or not. We'll see. I'm sorry. Do we get to see it as an audience?
Yeah, we do. And it is basically what you might expect if you imagine some subconsciously, casually racist white British 60s people making a, quote, grotesque statue. It's, sort of in the, tiki style, I guess. But it's, this big, 10-foot deity, god type thing.
Yep, I suspect your description is not far off the mark.
If you ignore, the casual, Disneyland style racism, then it was a pretty cool statue.
Yeah.
At this point, Ian and Sabitha and Altos arrive back. They've circled around the area and have not found any other entrance. GM is like, nope, the archway was the way in. And Ian is like,
Barbara, what are you doing? I told you to wait until we got back.
And Barbara's like, hey, I totally found the key in here.
Yeah, dude, what have you been doing?
Ian says that he's coming, and Barbara's like, no, it's cool. I've got it. I found the key.
Barbara's like, you were literally not even on the map. Look, the GM prepared a little map, and then you left it. Your miniature was on the side of the table. What did you think you were accomplishing?
So she climbs up onto this big statue, reaching up to its forehead where she saw the key. But as she pulls the key out, its arms, the statue arms, close around her legs.
Whoa.
And the statue wall turns around. Turns out it's another trick wall.
I mean, I guess in like a Indiana Jones Legends of the Hidden Temple kind of way, that's pretty cool. But at the same time, as you mentioned earlier, these things do have a sort of Disneyland casual racism built into them. So there's layers here that are a little hard to unpack sometimes.
Uh-huh. Now, the one thing that I didn't mention earlier when I described the statue was the statue arms. The whole statue is larger than life. It's like 8 to 10 feet tall or whatever. And I think it's like sitting down. Barbara had kind of like climbed up onto its lap. But the statue arms, like they end, like the kind of the carved part of the statue ends like shortly past the elbow, basically, and there are just holes, and then sticking out of the holes are regular human arms that are like painted the same color as the statue.
Is it just some dude sticking his arms through the statue prop? Awesome.
That is exactly what it is.
I love it.
So, yeah. Barbara is gone now. She's behind the statue wall.
Kyle, this is my jam. That's sort of like cheap special effect. I don't know if you can even call it a special effect.
Altos goes and he picks up the key. Barbara had dropped it, like when she was crabbed. So Altos goes and collects the key. Everybody else regroups outside the cave, and they talk about what they should do now. Sabitha realizes that if Barbara is in danger, she's still got her travel dial, and she could use that to escape.
That's true. It's one of those things where, like in D&D, if your character sheet gets too long, you forget all the useful items that you have. And then you're like, oh dang, like I could have just used my whatever to get out of that situation.
They know that it's possible that Barbara has not used her travel dial yet. They also realize that it's possible that she's been injured or captured or is somehow otherwise unable to use it. But it's also possible that she has used it and has gone on to the next place and could potentially be in some unknown danger there. So they figure they need to cover all the bases. So they decide that Altos, Sabitha, and Susan will use their travel dials to go on to the next place, and Ian will stay here for a bit and look for Barbara, and then head on to the next place either as soon as he finds her or basically when he's convinced that she's not here.
So as far as we know, so that the statue like turned around, it would seem to me like the most logical conclusion is that she's just back there somewhere. And yeah, so if I were to split the party, I would at least leave more people behind to look for her. Just in case she did get like somehow disabled, like they knocked her out or something.
Right, like I would assume there's someone or something on the other side of the statue wall that's gonna like do something to her.
Yeah. Guess we'll see.
So Altos and Susan both pop off, use their travel dials to pop off like pretty much immediately. Sabitha sticks around for a minute to like affix the key onto her necklace with the other key, and as she does that, she realizes that it's a fake.
Oh.
She says,
It's just an imitation. Look, Ian. This edge is a fraction shorter.
Ian wonders like,
maybe that's by design.
That's fine, like
yeah.
Maybe, yeah. But she insists.
No, they all look absolutely identical. So this one must be an imitation.
So they decide that Sabitha better go on ahead and let Altos and Susan know what's up, since they've already left and were like expecting Sabitha to join them. And Ian's just gonna have to stick here and join them once he's found both Barbara and the key.
I feel like they're really leaving it all up to Ian at this point.
So Sabitha, dials her travel dial and pops off, and Ian goes and climbs onto the statue, which closes its arms around him and turns around. Hi, Kyle here. Thanks for listening to The Doctor's Watcher. If you enjoy the podcast, it would mean a lot to us if you would leave a 5-star review on iTunes and tell your friends about us. But aside from that, we'd love to hear from you. Please feel welcome to drop us a line by emailing thedoctorswatcher@gmail.com or on Twitter @DoctorWatcher. Thanks for listening. Back to the show. The statue takes Ian into a whole little adventure dungeon where
It's like,
he
there,
sees...
see? If you guys had come with me, you too could be enjoying this awesome adventure dungeon. But guess I'm just going to have to do it all by myself.
First thing he notices is this big suit of armor standing next to the path, and the suit of armor is holding a large axe. William Russell, who plays Ian, rolls an investigation check, but he rolls a 1. So Ian just kind of like looks at it for a moment and then immediately turns away and steps on a loose piece of pavement, which of course activates the trap, and Ian completely fails to notice the suit of armor raising its axe behind him, and Barbara appears like just in time from around a corner, and she shouts at him, and he moves out of the way like just in time to avoid getting chopped in half. So yeah, I guess he had like a great dexterity save.
This cereal remains whatever it is. I hesitate to say good, but I am loving it.
Uh-huh.
Adventure Dungeon is the perfect description of this, by the way, Kyle.
Barbara tells Ian that she was going to use her travel dial if he didn't show up in like the next half hour. And he basically tells her that he's glad she didn't, because of course turns out the key was a fake and they still need to find the real one. Barbara says that that's not going to be easy because
This whole place is one big booby trap. It's full of things like that statue. I'd only been here a minute when part of the wall crashed down just where I've been standing.
Ian's like, yes, this is awesome.
Ian's like, no worries, we'll just do lots of checking for traps. Hey GM, how about that doorway? Can I investigate that doorway? And turns out the doorway is covered in vines and vegetation, just like everything else in the room. So Ian goes off to look for something to smash the doorway down with, but while he's gone, the camera shows us this old man who's inside this, inside the building, and he goes and he opens this door from within. Barbara shouts for Ian, because, the door's open now. Ian says he'll be right there, and then Barbara heads into the doorway, and...
So does Barbara see this little old man?
No, I think the old man had, opened it with a lever or something, if I recall.
Oh, so she just sees the door open?
Right, she just sees the door open.
Interesting.
So she goes through this newly opened doorway, and then fails her own dex save and is immediately caught by a net dropping from the ceiling.
Classic.
And she looks up where the net came from, and she sees that there are also a whole bunch of spikes in the ceiling, and it is slowly being lowered down toward her.
Also classic.
Yeah, it was a pretty great trap.
I've always kind of wondered how hard it is to actually get out from a net. Like, you see them all the time in cartoons and stuff. People getting, having nets thrown on them, or net guns or whatever, and it's just like, how hard is it? Like, maybe it's hard. I've never tried.
I guess it would kind of tingle you up for a bit, but
yeah. Seems like if you just get good leverage on it, maybe you can lift it off. But I also think that the edges are probably weighted, and then
that's probably true. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure. I should say I can pretty much guarantee that I personally, Benny, the person, the human being talking, would have no chance of getting out from under a character in a game or series, like, say, Doctor Who.
Ian, meanwhile, has found a pickaxe that seems like it would be a pretty great weapon. But when he picks it up, it turns out it's attached to a chain, and this sets off another trap, which causes an iron grating to shut, like trapping Ian in, behind the iron gate, basically.
Also classic.
So he starts using his new pickaxe to try to crowbar the bars open.
I was trying to get an item to get around another obstacle that caused an obstacle. Now I'm trying to use my item to get around the new obstacle so I can go to the original obstacle.
Meanwhile,
Hashtag 2020 mood. Hashtag politics. Hashtag capitalism.
Meanwhile, Barbara's ceiling spikes are coming, lower and lower down pretty slowly until they're just about to touch her, and then all of a sudden they reverse and just go back up, and the old man from earlier comes out, like, into the room that she's still trapped in the net in, and he asks her,
"Why have you come in search of the keys?"
He wonders...
Like, keys? I just like dungeons.
He wonders if she's a Vord, even though he says that she doesn't look like one. She's not wearing the rubber suit.
But I do wonder what they look like under those suits.
Yeah, we don't actually know, but apparently not like Barbara. She says that Arbitan sent her. Remember, that was a monk dude from the Pyramid Island.
Okay, yeah.
The quest giver.
I remember that there was a monk dude, but I think that you said that we only get his name once. But
yeah,
you did say it was, and the name Arbitan does vaguely sound familiar. Anyway, please continue.
So the old man doesn't believe her at first, and he wants proof. And she's like, how am I supposed to prove that Arbitan sent us? And then she's like, oh, I know, we've got this travel dial. And the old man's like, cool, let me examine it. If it's set to the full and complete and correct travel program, then I'll know that Arbitan sent you. Like, he's the only one who could program them to get all the keys.
I don't know if I trust this guy.
So he takes her travel dial and leaves to go investigate it, leaving her here in the room. She's managed at this point to, like, get the net off of herself.
Told you. Barbara, person of action.
Ian has also managed at this point to pop one of his pop one of his bars out.
Cool.
Freeing himself. And he rushes over to find Barbara, and they both hear the old man shouting for help.
Okay. Also, Ian, also a person of action. I've decided to make this gender neutral, to make it less 60s feminist and a little more, egalitarian.
Nice. So, Barbarian, ship of action,
yes,
goes to investigate this old man calling for help, and it turns out that the old man is getting strangled by some vines that are coming in through like some gaps in the door.
Dang.
So Ian grabs a nearby machete and hacks the old man free.
An extremely convenient machete.
Yeah, it was just kind of sitting there. Ian's like doing really great at finding the random weapons in the environment.
Yeah.
So the old man tells them,
"It's coming again. The jungle is coming. When the whispering starts, it's death, I tell you. Death."
Well, what about the screaming?
I was kind of wondering that too, like screaming has become whispering now, apparently.
Yeah, it's kind of strange that we got the screaming in the previous episode, but now that we're in the screaming jungle, we've moved on to whispering.
So the camera fades to black, which we know indicates a passage of time, rather than just cutting from one scene to another. And then we see the old man in a bed. Barbara thinks that he's dying. He warns them not to stay, and Ian's like, "Dude, we need the key. Where's the key? We can't leave until we have the key." And the old man is like,
"Has Arbidan sent someone at last?"
Yes.
and Ian's like, "Yes, that's what we've been telling you this whole time. Arbitan sent us."
Uh-huh.
The old man says,
"The idol. I put a false key on his head."
You
and
sure
Barbara's
did.
like, "I found it." And the old man's like, "Well, that's what activated all the traps. Arbitan should have warned you about that shit." And Ian's like, "Dude, just fucking tell us where the actual real key is."
Yeah, quit recapping.
So dude like brings him in closer and, wants to like whisper in their ear or whatever. They lean in and he says,
D-E-3-O-2.
and Ian's like, what the fuck does that mean? And the old man just says,
Quickly, the darkness, the whispering will start.
and then he dies.
You sunk my battleship.
So Barbara and Ian head through a door that he had kind of indicated, and on the other side of the door is what seems to be some sort of botany lab.
Cool.
There's test tubes and beakers and also a whole shit ton of plants.
Science.
There's also a safe, so Ian wonders if the old man's message was a safe combination.
Yeah, that would be, I think, what I would try next in this adventure dungeon / escape room, apparently.
Uh-huh. So they check the safe out. Turns out the combination lock on the safe only has letters, no numbers. So Ian speculates that maybe the numbers are how many times to turn the dial. So he turns it to the D, then he turns it to the E, then he just kind of randomly turns it 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Then he turns it to the O, and then he randomly turns it 2 more times. But every single time he turned the knob in the same direction.
Oh.
And
yeah,
of
when you
course
said randomly, I was like, but you reverse direction and you go all the way around that many times.
No, he just gives
But
it
if he's not randomly.
Yeah, 3 random clockwise quarter turns basically.
Okay.
Of course, this doesn't unlock it because that's not how combination safes work, Ian.
Nope.
But they give up on the safe before they remember how to properly operate combination locks, and they start searching the rest of the room.
Yeah, I will say the only reason I know how to operate a combination lock is because we had to put them on our lockers in high school.
Yeah, that's basically the only reason I know as well.
Maybe high school lockers used to be safer back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Or, 50s, which is probably when Ian went to school.
Yeah, that's probably true. He may have even gone to school in, like, the 40s.
Oh, yeah, I always forget how old he is.
So they start searching the rest of the room. We get another fade to black indicating passage of time. And then, in the next bit, they're still searching the room. And Barbara wonders,
What did he mean, darkness, the whispering will begin? Whispering? I wonder if that's what Susan heard.
but Ian's just like,
I don't know, I think he was rambling. It didn't mean anything.
Also, whispering is like the exact opposite of screaming.
Uh-huh. Ian is reading the old man's diary of experiments, trying to figure out what he was working on. And it seems that he was working on some sort of growth accelerator, as he called it, to change nature's tempo of creation and destruction. There's this whole diary bit about how, nature has a certain tempo of creation and, things live and die and et cetera, et cetera. Barbara's like,
Yes, well, that may all be very fascinating. But we are supposed to be looking for the combination to that safe.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
so, Ian gets back to looking.
We only have an hour in this escape room.
It's getting dark out by this point, and they start hearing strange noises.
What's that?
I wouldn't really describe these noises as either whispering or screaming. I'm not really sure how I would describe them. I'm sure I'll probably drop some audio in here, but yeah.
Enjoy, listeners, because I don't get to know what this sounds like. That's fine.
A few moments after it gets dark and they start hearing these noises, vines start all breaking in through all of the walls, and Ian realizes,
Oh, Barbara, don't you see? That's what he meant. Tempo of destruction. I mean, normally it would take 50, perhaps 100 years for the jungle to overrun this place. Now the whole process has been accelerated.
and Barbara's like,
You mean the jungle is attacking us?
Yes.
I feel like we've kind of established this already. We've seen this several times now. But okay.
so they both just kind of stand around for a minute trying to figure out what to do, as all the vines are trashing the room. And it's not long before some vines, of course, start twining around Barbara's legs. So she screams, and Ian rushes over to help her. And after he frees her, or as he's freeing her, he happens to notice a broken glass jar on the ground, that had been knocked off the table in all the vine's destruction or whatever. And this broken jar has a label on it reading NH4NO3, and he's like, oh shit, it's a chemical formula! That's what DE302 is.
Wait, isn't he the science professor?
Uh-huh.
Good job.
Well,
Ian.
so, yeah. I guess to cut him a little bit of slack, I did look both of these up, and NH4NO3 is, the label that he just saw.
Mm-hmm.
That is ammonium nitrate,
Cool.
which is good for fertilizers and also good for bombs.
Good to know, I guess.
But DE302 is absolutely nothing.
He's like, old man, you fail your chemistry test. 0 out of 10. See me after class.
Uh-huh. But they both start looking around the room for the DE302 jar.
No dying until after detention. Sorry, I wasn't done with my joke.
Barbara finds the jar, like, still on the desk. It hasn't been broken yet. And it seems to be about half full of, like, dried beans, look like.
Yum.
So she dumps the beans out, and sure enough, buried in the dried beans in the jar is the key. The vines are still, like, trashing the place.
Yeah, I was hoping there could be something in the container that would help them against the vines.
No, nothing like that, just the key.
Alrighty.
Ian's like, all right, we've got it. Let's turn our travel dials and GTFO.
Cool.
So they do that and end up somewhere cold. In fact, it's like so cold that Barbara is basically immediately freezing to death.
Hashtag jealous.
Seriously, here in our 102 degree California weather.
Yeah, what's that meme? God, I wish that were me.
She says,
It must be far below zero.
I assume she probably means Celsius rather than Fahrenheit.
Mm-hmm.
In either case, though, below zero is pretty fucking cold. Mm-hmm. Ian tries to get her to move, but she's just like,
I can't move, Ian. I'm too cold.
and he says,
Barbara, you've got to. We must move. If we don't find shelter, we don't stand a chance.
and as he says this, the title, next episode, The Snows of Terror, appears on screen.
Oh, man. A, great episode title, and B, very obviously describing the exact situation that they're in, just like the screaming jungle earlier. It's like, we're in a jungle, it's screaming. Next episode, the screaming jungle.
Uh-huh.
We're in a place, it's cold and snowy. Next episode, the snows of terror.
I guess they're putting in the terror there. It could have been like the snows of sadness or
The snows of being cold.
the snows of freezing to death.
Adding of terror is always a plus.
Yeah, I think you could probably add of terror to just about any Doctor Who episode title.
Nice.
The Screaming Jungle of Terror.
Nice. You would only improve it.
The Sea of Death of Terror.
Hold on a second.
Assassin at Peking of Terror.
Oh, okay, that one's cool.
Or it could even be like Assassin of Terror at Peking. I don't know. Mighty Kublai Khan of Terror.
You have options. Yeah, that's a good episode. I love the D&D module / escape room vibe of the whole thing.
Yeah, this was definitely a good, kind of Indiana Jones escape room type adventure module that the GM has prepared for him.
I did
kind of a
think
shame that only half the players got to play the escape room.
If my experience with escape rooms is to be relied upon, that sounds about right. Like, come on, guys, isn't this going to be fun? And then nobody wants to do it. But I did think of a test to establish once and for all whether this is a D&D module or an escape room. And that is, did Ian keep the pickaxe and the machete after he used them one time, or did he discard them immediately after using them?
Pretty sure he discarded them immediately after using them.
I think that would make it an escape room.
Joined his inventory.
Now we know.
Either that, or he did write them down on a sheet and just immediately forgot about them. That's also plausible.
That's true. Yeah, cool. So before we move on to the next episode, I guess I could ask you this then too, but I'm gonna ask it now. What's it like watching an episode of Doctor Who without Doctor Who being in it?
It's interesting, I think this episode was fun and engaging enough that, like, I almost didn't even notice his absence, to be honest.
Huh. Interesting.
I will say that as soon as the credits started rolling, literally the very first credit said, Doctor Who, William Hartnell. And that caused me to laugh out loud because he did not appear in the episode at all whatsoever.
To be first build.
And, like, they don't have just, like, stock end credits. Like, the end credits change every episode. Like, they credit the specific, like, you know, characters who show up for that episode. Mm-hmm. You know, like, Arbitan got the credit, you know, in his episode or whatever. So, yeah, they could have dropped William Hartnell from the credits, but they were probably, you know, contractually prevented from doing so.
I wonder if there must have been someone in the 60s who was like, I think I'll check out that BBC show that people have been talking about. I think I'll watch this Doctor Who, and sat down and watched just this episode and was very confused.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Well, find out in 2 weeks whether William Hartnell is still on vacation in the snows of terror.
Indeed. We'll see you then, listeners.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Kyle here. The Doctor's Watcher would like to thank Circuit23 for the awesome theme song he created for us. You can find his music, including our theme, at soundcloud.com/circuit23, and you can reach him at circuit.23, that's circuit.23 at gmail.com. Thanks to Benny for listening to me talk about Doctor Who, and thanks to all of you for listening to Benny listen to me talk about Doctor Who. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at thedoctorswatcher@gmail.com or on Twitter at DoctorWatcher. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you review your podcasts. Join us next time on The Doctor's Watcher.
I do wish Ian wouldn't treat us like Dresden China.
I think it's nice the way he looks after us all the time.
Yes, I know. But just once in a while.
You rebel.
Yes.